Hello and welcome back to this course of videos on Node.js, the Express framework and the Socket.io framework, which enables WebSockets. Now, in the previous video, if you recall, we created our WebSocket server. Now, in this video, we're going to look at the client side. First of all, I'm going to look at my index.html file, and you can see that I have this JavaScript include here, this script tag, and I'm calling this particular file sockets.io.js in the socket.io folder. Now this folder and file does not exist on my server. What actually happens here is when this page when the browser downloads this page and makes this request, this HTTP request for this particular file, it is intercepted by the socket.io module that you have installed on the server, and the relevant module is then downloaded to the browser. So this is actually how you're getting your socket.io framework imported, if you like, to the client through this way. So that's my HTML page. Now let's look at my front-end JavaScript page called main.js. Now you can see that on my onDOM-loaded function, I am running this line of code here, which is saying let socket equals io.connect. So io is basically the object that was made available to us with this, from this include, from downloading the client-side Socket.io framework. We have access, we are given access to this IO object. This IO object has a connect method which actually reaches out to our node server and creates a WebSocket TCP connection. So we'll see, this is happening as soon as we download our initial page. So just to give you a real-time example, if I set up a separate browser here and I connect to localhost, so at that point there, when this page is downloaded, this line of code has been run, obviously onDOM loaded now, and this io.connect method has been run. Now if we look on the server side what that does, we'll flick over to the server side and we can see that down here we have our io.sockets.on. So this is similar to adding event listener when you use your add event listener on the JavaScript side. So it's saying io.sockets.on. So on connection, this is the code that we're going to run. So this is the code that was just ran when I opened this browser, made my request, and downloaded this page. So let's take a look at the code step by step. So you can see that on the connection object, the callback function, as we can see, is we're passing an argument which is the socket. We're not passing it, it's actually being passed in by socket.io. Now this socket represents the connection between my browser window here and my server. So we talked before about it's a single TCP connection for the whole time of anything that I do and interface with my server here. It's going to be this one socket. That's how we can reference that one TCP connection. So what I'm doing here, first of all, is I'm just adding this socket to an array. I'm going to create an array of connections just so I can keep track of how many connections that we have at any one time. And so I'm pushing that into the array. I'm just going to console.log that the connection's open. Then what I'm going to do now is I am doing a socket. So again, this socket refers to this one TCP connection that we're talking about, and I'm going to use a socket.emit method. Now, this is the way that that socket.io and WebSockets work. You have the emit method, which is going to be sending, and then on the other side, you have the on method, which is receiving. So emit is sending, and on is receiving. Now within this emit method here, you can see we have two arguments that we are passing. The first is the name of the message that you're sending. The message that I wish to send is user array to clients. And then the second argument that I'm passing is my users array. Again, we haven't added a user to the user array yet, but when we do, this would need to be passed back to the client. Now you can see I've used the same emit method to pass back the messages array. So basically I have an array of messages, array of users, and array of connections. These are going to store all of the users and all of the messages that are taking place. So any users in here and any messages in here are being stored in these two arrays on the server. And every time someone connects, I need to pass those arrays to the client, and I'm using the emit method here. And so that was why when we first logged in, first downloaded our index.html, our users and our messages are already downloaded for us right away because they are stored on our server in these arrays. So this is actually what happened there. So we emitted, and so I said every emit has a sister called on. So let's now go back to the browser side, so that our main.js file on our client side, and look at how our browser used these messages that were emitted. So I'm just going to copy this, Control-C, to copy this here, then whip over to my client side, my main.js file, and I'm going to find that user array to clients on the client side. So you can see here is a socket.on, socket.on user array to clients. That is the sister of socket.emit user array to clients, which sent my users array. So you can see on the client side, my first argument that I'm passing to my socket.on is the name of the message that we are listening out for, and then the second argument that we're passing is our callback function, where excuse me, socket.io is passing the data that was sent in the second argument here. You see, so we have, this is our sister function here. So now we've got, through this data object, we have access to the users array that is being pulled from the server. And then all we're doing here is we are populating a unordered list, and we are looping through the array that's being passed. It's actually a reverse loop, as you can see here. The reason I reverse looped is because I wanted the most recent user to be at the top, not at the bottom. And then I loop through here, and I just append the LIs. I'm using Bootstrap classes here. I'm appending the LIs to the UL, and this is how we get this here. Now, as you can see from the browser side, we do exactly the same thing with the messages. As soon as a user downloads the initial page, they will get all the messages. So we can also see that if we go to the server, we're still on connect here. You can see we do exactly the same. We emit message array to clients, and then we pass the messages array. And so again, we have, if I just copy this and we go to our client side and I find the sister on the client side, we can see it here. Exactly, socket.on message array to client. The sister to socket.emit message array to client, passes the messages array, receives the messages array in the callbacks, in the parameter for the callback function. So I have the messages here. Once again, I'm just getting document.getElement by ID to get the div which is holding my chat, which is this div here. And then I am again doing a reverse loop through the array because I want the most recent messages to be at the top, not at the bottom. And then I am, with my inner HTML, I am adding a div, again using a class of well, which is a Bootstrap class, and adding in the, I am using the data array, and the array, we'll see later that this array actually contains objects. It's not like the users, which just contains a bunch of strings, which are usernames. the messages array actually contains JavaScript objects. So you can see here we are looping through and we are drilling down into the username key, the username property of the particular object, and then also the message property of the particular object. And that's how we get this effect here. So this is the username property within the JavaScript object, and this is the message property. So we're going to finish there because we're at the 10-minute mark. So just to recap what we did, we just looked through the code of when this initial page is downloaded by the user. No one's logged in yet or anything, but the original page has been downloaded and they've been given the online users and they've been given the messages using WebSockets, and it's all based on this onConnection event handler. So we'll continue in the next video, and I look forward to seeing you then.